Antarctica, distinguished by its striking loss and climatic conditions at sea, plays an important role in melting and trade. Currently, she performs important tasks. In the next few minutes, we will look at the history of the continent and look at what Antarctica looked like without ice. This name was also given to foreigners. Let's start with antiquity. For 99% of its history, Antarctica has been a common landmass that is hard to distinguish from Australia or South America. In addition, Antarctica has high connections with 6 continents, as well as with Africa and other territories. It was part of the Gondwana supercontinent, which formed about 500 to 800 million years ago, and then became part of the better-known Pangaea continent about 335 million years ago. The western part of Antarctica skeletons is similar to South America, with which it was associated. In fact, there is an extension of a mountain range in Antarctica that has been torn away from its original location by the movement of tectonic plates. The eastern part of the continent, in turn, is closely connected with Australia and Oceania, so much so that it is part of the Pacific Ring of Fire, where the planet's southernmost inactive volcano, Erebus, is located almost 4 kilometers high. This volcano is quite active and last erupted in 2020. Thus, Antarctica is a continent cut off from the rest of the world, but it is a full-fledged continent with all the ensuing consequences. It is interesting to note that the history of more ice has been on since the skeletons of western Antarctica are similar to South America, with which it has been associated. Geological processes in the last few days with unexpected changes. Antarctica, which was a living and green continent a few hundred million years ago, began to decompose about 150 million years ago. And about 34 million years ago, they finally broke. It would be if it were just a change in geographical location, but in the animal world there is often a possibility that they occur even in nature. However, with the breaking of the current associated with Antarctica, which previously ascended around the continent, a special situation occurs. It looped, began to circle around the continent, producing a disco ball on the dance floor. In November 2021, the journal Nature published calculations related to the occurrence of this dance between South America and Antarctica. It was enough just a few hundred meters of water. This connection of the continents not only led to an amazing phenomenon, but also had an impact on the planet as a whole. Antarctica of the Ice Age came to the whole planet, affecting even the most remote corners. These changes appear to have lasted for lifetimes, if not billions of years, affecting the normal course of life on our planet. Antarctica today is an ice sheet that covers the continent. Its area is 14 million square kilometers, which is twice the area of Australia, and almost the same as the area of South America. Antarctica contains 61% of the planet's fresh water and 90% of dangerous fresh water. If this ice is melted, the level of the world ocean will rise by 70 meters, which will sink to the flooding of the floors of Britain, Northern Europe, and the Crimea. However, in Australia there is an increased focus on the sea. Despite this, the total land area on Earth does not suffer much, as under the ice of Antarctica is located on a continent that occupies more than Europe. This continent ranks 5th on the list of the largest, but its shape is not round, as on a map similar to a plateau, similar to Australia, with coastlines. The thickness of the ice cover in some areas reaches 4 kilometers. To be precise, Antarctica grabbed the planet with such a margin that the continent fell 500 meters below sea level. However, New York, Odessa, and St. Petersburg should not worry about this, despite the touching photos and emotional manipulations associated with global warming. The level of glaciers in Antarctica is currently changing only in small places, and even more than a few years ago it was stated that global warming, on the contrary, is increasing the thickness of the continent's ice sheet. In general, when you can start thinking about the forecast of the level of the world ocean. It is always mentioned in all private chronicles and maps until 1820. when Australia was called New Holland from 1644. In 1824, Great Britain stole the name Australia for its continent. Antarctica got its name, which was given to people. This is a historical mystery related to the race for Antarctica, the first expeditions to the poles, and the difficult everyday life of polar explorers. About what we went through in the last video, link in the description. Let's focus on what happened after that. Then, at the beginning of the 20th century, the race for a colony, traditional for mankind, began. The USA, USSR, Sweden, Belgium, and Germany announced their territorial claims. In 1939, a German expedition marked the land with swastikas from the air and proclaimed the region a colony of the Third Reich under the name New Swabia. This size, of course, achieved by the conspiracy theories that the Nazis originate in Antarctica, where flying saucers are being developed and imperial droids are being trained. But the reality, as always, is much more boring. During World War II, Germany sent only a few important ships converted into raiders near the continent. A unique combat encounter occurred on January 14, 1941, when the cruiser P. Pancake captured fishermen off the South Georgia Islands. A broad consideration of Operation Tabarin, conducted by the British in Antarctica from 1943 to 1946, which, in fact, was aimed at finding the secret bunker 211 with Nazi submarines. Within the framework of Tabarin, the declassified documents of the Third Reich Harken were investigated, with the exception of cases of dropping the swastika and installing geodetic equipment. Usually these documents were not presented in a different order. The continent became the basis for one runway at Little America 4, and 4,700 people made expeditions to the area throughout the year. In 1958, one of the bombers crashed in Antarctica, resulting in the tragedy of 3 fighters. This meeting was the occasion for an experiment that the Pentagon called the most ambitious operation ever carried out under the name August. In the context of this experiment, an interesting theory was tested, based on the assumption that being detected by rockets in space could disrupt their electron flows. As part of the operation, the United States went further and created ionizing radiation, which, according to calculations, after being detonated in Antarctica, spread to America. Thus, they made America invulnerable to the nuclear weapons of the USSR. Resources were mobilized for this operation for 1,000 people and $9 million. This demonstrated the seriousness of the U.S. intentions. Between August 2027 and 3 W-25 nuclear warheads were detonated at an altitude of September 170 to 794 kilometers south of the Falkland Islands. The detectors actually worked and registered the appearance of an electron belt capable of removing the warhead from the design. However, this belt does not provide reliable protection. In addition, after the leak of information about the tests in 1959, the public was outraged by the presence of diseases caused by allergies and unpredictable consequences. As a result, on December 1, 1959, the Treaty on Antarctica was adopted, providing for the complete demilitarization of the continent, a ban on the prohibition of weapons, and the use of Antarctica exclusively for world purposes. At the moment, 46 states have joined the treaty. Although this may be a consequence of a few, the main thing is that all gun owners are a consequence of it. And until the sports day, Antarctica remains accessible to a continent without borders, an army, and a ban on the prohibition of weapons and the use of Antarctica exclusively for world purposes. Until we meet again, friends.